Wow, 36. Can you imagine it? This 36 polystyrite I got from securing Nason's Defiance when NC had, I think it was NC that we were playing. Oh no, it was VS. They had created an island of TR disconnected land, and I just jumped in there and took Nason's because I saw nobody was doing it. And while I was taking Nason's, I was sitting there talking philosophy. I was just so completely unaware that I took Nason's that I was taking Nason's that when I did take it, it was at the end of a selection of philosophy that I was expressing, and I was like, oh, I just took Nason's. It was, and I secured Nason's for an hour as an NS character, which is what I am now. And I need to I need to contact Lawrence Lessig to let him know I'm doing this. Maybe I shouldn't, but Lawrence Lessig is a he is I would say he's a political scientist. He's somebody who just understands the behavior of government and politics and is able to retain being consistently on topic and never veering from it on the reason why our democracy doesn't work in America. And he's very well read and he's very detailed. And he is constantly reiterating and perfecting his message, which is that the rich nominate the people we vote for, and that the revolving door in the government is when Congress people leave and come back being paid 8 times as much to exploit the relationships they developed while being in Congress to push through laws that favor corporations over people. And also to talk about such topics as gerrymandering and campaign reform. And so in to pay a little bit homage and to try to direct people, at least get the brand of Lawrence Lessig into their heads, and then maybe somewhere down the road they find a talk by Lawrence Lessig and then are kind of like, as a result, the reason why brands work so well in marketing and stuff, the reason why they use brands is they've realized that if they can put into your head um, a brand name, that whenever you're given the choice of making a decision, the recognition turns to affirmation, turns to a purchase. It turns to people actually getting in and trying to figure out what the relationship is between my character and my ass kicking to of them to the or my really helping their faction succeed to the significance of the name that I selected. And then I'll go and read it, and then they'll be completely inspired by the guy that I'm inspired by, which is the reason why I took on this name, and the reason why my outfit has the message in it. Whenever you see it on the map, you'll see an American flag, and then under it, it'll say, "Rich nominate, we vote," which is the simplest way I could really express, given the limitations of name length, exactly what is wrong with American democracy today. And the liberals are not going to understand why the conservatives picked Trump. They're going to understand, but they're also not going to understand because the conservatives, they're the extreme conservatives, are the people that are really on the end of trying to give acceptance in the Republican Party to people who are not rich, um, but people who are dignified and all that. Maybe are too dignified, um, but I understand it to be an attempt to try to create a perfect, and I just lost my train of thought. So I'm going to go ahead and play the game. If I could get 75 Cynthium, or actually 150 Cynthium, which I'll probably only ever get by getting so much Araxium, that's the green stuff. Cynthium is the cyan stuff, and the purple stuff is called polysterite. It's just made up names, of course, but it sounds significant because everybody in PlanetSide has heard of Araxium. And it also gives them a hierarchy of importance and priority. And wow. Araxium, the green stuff, can be used for discounts, can be used for deployable vehicles that you can deploy anywhere on anything, which adds a certain amount of mystery to the game and fun. Mystery always brings fun. Unless it's somebody that relies so much on their approach to capturing bases that they don't like to be surprised. There are those people. I like to surprise and bend people's brains. I like to manipulate the outcome of a war. I like to present the perfect asshole that's going to be throwing rocks at your door until you just can't stand it anymore and have to go out and get a sandwich and watch a movie because all day long you were hearing somebody tossing at a random time a rock at your door. So let's get down on the surface and see what we can do to help whatever faction it is it's going to give me. Because in this, characters are of no faction, they're of no team, and as a result, nobody can blame me for being on the other side. Because that's just the behavior of how the game handles the NS characters. The bots, what they would consider bots for hire. We're kind of the NS bots. Us guys, we're basically guys sitting in rooms controlling bots that fill out the army of the factions to keep things fair. And I guess some of these bots would be AI controlled. They would work in situ, but I think to be relevant to today, they would be the same as the guys who control the planes that fly over Iraq and kill potential terrorists that they can identify precisely by using Twitter and fuck it. I'm gonna play the game. So and you can understand that I'm going to be incomprehensible because I fall asleep often, and it's my drunkenness. That's my kind of drunkenness because I don't drink, but drunks are incomprehensible, and then they also pick off fights inside the chat system whenever they really just should ignore the chat system, which is what everybody does. And if you talk in faction, then they're going to be that 10% are going to pipe up and extrapolate their persona to everybody else when they say nobody cares about the shit you're talking about, whenever the reality is that some do. I'm going to get some drink. Oh my goodness. Okay. I wonder, my iPad's sitting on the ground. Oh, it's got enough juice. Good deal. The best thing you do with that guy is leave him off. I probably shouldn't put him on the floor. because this guy is so important to me in my world. I don't know what I'd be able to do without him. Love my iPad. Understand that I bought the iPad 1. And understand, before the iPad 1, I was not a Mac fanboy. Which people would probably trip to me as a bagger for Kroger. People would come up and I'd say, I am not a fan of Windows. They'd say, so you're a Mac guy? And I'd say, no, I'm a Linux guy. That's how I stand in the world. And Linux, the thing about Linux is that it's freeware. Anybody can have it. But most people don't know how to work it because it is so, in their perception, it would be so hard to understand, which is none such. It's fairly easy to understand Linux if you're willing to put the time aside to learn it. It is much more perfect an operating system than Windows will ever be in any sense of the word in the future, and there's so much shit wrong with Windows. And in this, I'm going to start talking about the how fucked up Windows is, which I will go into all sorts of detail in this to keep myself awake and to keep myself involved. And it looks like I am now fighting on the side of, wow, it's white. I'm on NC. Look at that. So I need to help NC to get ahead in this game. However, it looks like the alert hasn't happened, which means that it isn't really important until the alert happens for us to win. So that they've warp gated us. They're hoping that somehow we will not raise to the occasion and actually fuck them up. So we're going to talk about my favorite topic, and I'm sorry to the people that work on Microsoft Windows. You have provided value in this universe, and that is in the area of video games. But the problem is I can't run a video game on Windows because I believe the government has figured out somehow, and I believe, and I will expose it, that I have seen pedophile child porn. I have seen it, and they think I am a pedophile, and they're using Windows to come in and try to see if I'm looking at child porn. That's the only thing I can imagine, is that they're coming in and they're going into my machine to see if they can see me, to validate maybe a concern to investigate me. And I see that as invasion of privacy. And I'm a Jesus-inspired person, and I've said a lot of stuff that even people who are in seeking out pedophiles and seeking out to vilify them. Have one guy in particular, the guy that pursued Ravi Zacharias and found him out to be a sexual predator. And Ravi Zacharias being the great, I guess, was great, but they found out that he faked his credentials. A great apologetics instructor, which I still think he was well-meaning. He was just not, being of Indian descent, trying to get out of that situation of being, and in that he probably faked his credentials to get himself get his foot in the door in the area that he wanted to be involved with, and may have, like me, been a little bit pretentious in generating more understanding than probably I should even have. But I will point out to people that the reason why I have an attraction for young girls, and it isn't child porn, it's for jailbait, is that I grew up, when you hit puberty, you want to have a relationship with girls your own age. And when they shun you, which they will at that age, it makes you want to somehow complete that, to complete that capacity to want to have a relationship with girls of that age. That's the only thing I can imagine is why I'm attracted to girls I can't have or nobody should have because they're not at the development, the intellectual development to understand what sex is about and to understand um, that they can't have it until they've developed their ability to pursue college, and after college is the best time to start getting sexually involved, to get into marriage and to start having children. It is, but the thing is, it's really as a result of being a bagger for Kroger, I came in contact with women who had their children at age 13, and I've seen the good and the bad. And there are some that there's a one lady that we all revere in our store that we had who went into retirement, and her name, I'm trying to remember her name, um, Patsy. Her name was Patsy. And Patsy um, was a great, or she was like, was it great? So she had children at a young age. Those children had children. Those children had children. Those children had children. So by the time she hit retirement, she's like great, possibly another great grandma. Just unfathomable amount of greatness there. And self-supportive. Her children weren't supporting her. Self-supported and great work ethic. A mom to everybody in the store. She would probably be dismayed that I would have an attraction for girls, but I think she was there whenever I revealed to everybody that I fapped to porn and did this in front of a 15-year-old girl that I really wasn't attracted to at all. That girl turned around and said, and started expressing her confusion about what fappers are, which I will develop, is that fappers are they don't have any interest in having sex. They're that it's stopped at masturbation, and they use masturbation to get the dopamine to deal with life and the anxiety and to relax and to meditate, even though that's incomprehensible to women that men could meditate on porn. It is the case, just as it is the case for women who have addictions to slot machines because they're trying to get the amount of money that they might become independent from men and have and be independent from ever needing marriage or in order to have a family. Um, because 1 in 5 women are raped, but rape has many different levels of definition. Like I would say that bringing black people here against their will to America to become slaves is rape. So our founding fathers raped people. And nobody wants to recognize such things, but I will bring it to the forefront. And our government rapes people through windows, I believe. I believe that as a result of the antitrust lawsuit they brought before Microsoft, in secret they negotiated with Microsoft a dropping maybe of that whole thing to get capacity to get in and have a back door into Windows because they were losing the capacity to collect intelligence. When, such as with the RSA, when they said that you cannot export 64-bit encryption to the rest of the world. Also, whenever they were trying to get access to people's phone through the Clipper chip um, in the 90s, they came to the realization that they probably it is probably the basis for them bringing the antitrust suit. It probably had nothing to do with the public interest. It probably had a lot to do with the government to try to figure out some way to connect to to leverage their their capacity to be able to do this, leverage a corporation into giving them special access to people's machines. And Microsoft knows that in China and other places that people will replicate their machine, their operating system, and install it without giving them any royalties. Microsoft really doesn't have that much of a problem with that because Microsoft would put Windows on any machine that they gave OEMs that creates Windows machines. They produce these machines, and the reason they're even able to put Windows on the machines is they're given the capacity to have specialized versions of Windows for their machines at pennies on the dollar from Microsoft. And there are a lot of people that know that they can get Windows for almost nothing if they compose themselves as being OEMs. If you go on eBay, you'll find these guys, and usually what they do is they provide a cheap copy of Windows with a sound card, this special little connector that lets you connect your sound card to the sound outputs on your computer, which is like the the prerequisite, the basic prerequisite of being able to distribute copies of Microsoft Windows. That they probably stipulate that you have to offer some sort of technology of the computer before you can distribute OEM copies of Microsoft Windows. Anyhow, the government was saying at the time you shouldn't be able to export 64-bit encryption when in reality, in freeware, everybody in the world was passing around DES 1024-bit encryption. And there was one particular guy by the name of Mark Shuttleworth who used this, used the encryption to develop certificate authorities, a certificate authority called VeriSign, and he was in no, it wasn't VeriSign. It was VeriSign was his competitor. He was Thought, and Thought supported the world, and VeriSign was just for America. And I guess he sold to VeriSign Thought later on when the government relinquished their control over encryption. And he made $600 million off of that. He took $100 million of that and pursued his boyhood fantasy, just as with Elon Musk, of being able to go into space. And I guess it was maybe he only spent $10 million on that. It wasn't $100 million. And then he took some of his money and devoted it to freeware development by establishing Canonical, who manages the distribution of Linux called Ubuntu. And if it weren't for Ubuntu, I'd never be able to install Linux on any PC, because before that, to install Linux was a real nerdy thing to be able to do. And even if I consider myself to be a nerd, or people consider me to be a nerd, I was not a nerd of level to be able to install Linux on a machine, even if all it was that you established a boot sector and set up grub and then just copied over the necessary executables into the necessary folders on the PC. I just didn't know how to do that. And once I got Ubuntu, I was able to, which is an African word, that is the African idea of offering basic services to the poor, to people in need, so that they might be able to pick themselves up from their bootstraps. And a bootstrap in computer science is the basic operating system, like BIOS, that permits you to start up a machine or start up an operating system. So Ubuntu is a bootstrap for installing Linux, which is what everybody should learn how to do if they get a PC. Because this is why Microsoft put Windows on every machine, is to keep people ignorant of operating systems, to make money off of the hand-holding of people who prefer to be ignorant. And it is because of that ignorance that there are people in the universe Luddites that really shouldn't have to be concerned about this, but should be concerned because it is factual and they fear it. That viruses exist on the Windows platform, but viruses really don't exist on the Android or iPhone platforms because they use app stores in order to do distributions. So, until you understand that, and also to understand what a virus is executable code that falls into it's there's an idea in computer science that that code should never the computer should never interpret data as being code and code as being data. Although the basis of artificial intelligence is the capacity for code to generate its own code to write itself. A virus is a kind of artificial intelligent malware that writes itself, at the very least, writes itself all over a disk in hopes that somehow that it will spread to other computers. And how it spreads is by somehow positioning itself inside of a disk that it might get executed by the processor. And it's the same as a virus in a human, and that is an injection of instructions into an organism by accident. And as a result, by just the right proteins or the right chemical attraction that will bring on the virus's payload and let it inject itself into the executable environment of the cell, so that the cell is reproducing virus and not reproducing cells. And it's the immune system's job to find out these failures, these cells that do not pass the black box test of being well behaving, to recognize bad behavior in cells and know that that's virus and that it needs to get sacked and thrown out the door. Vaccines are an attempt to try to tell the immune system what is dangerous to it, to the person, and to find it out and deport it out the bowels, which is where it goes. It gets dropped into the colon and out the shithole. But inside of a computer, a virus is code that gets access to the processor's execution. That the execution is the control system, and it will thus do all sorts of things: install rootkits, offer back doors to wow, a lot of, what are all these people coming in? We got like a crap load, it sounds like, of, why does it sound like there is a ton of galaxies out there and I don't see them? There's that, it's a lib. There's a lib. I'm hearing like multiple libs and I'm only seeing one. Anyhow, big vehicles that go around picking on little twerps all through the game. We still haven't hit alert. Okay, so it's my belief that the government is using Windows to come in and infiltrate my machine, take over my administrative access and to eavesdrop on my screen to figure out if I'm looking at something I shouldn't be, so that they can investigate, so that they can have basis for investigation, and maybe to put me in prison for just looking at material they don't want me to look at. That the rest of the world would fear anybody to have access without concern for context. And I believe it is, and everybody should realize that every policeman in existence, every FBI and CIA official has seen child porn and is probably fapped to it, you know, and they would never know, because when you're in positions of power, you're immune to being found out for anything, because you know how to evade whistleblowers. And so I'm sure policemen get access to weed, they get access to all sorts of things they shouldn't have, and everybody knows in law enforcement that that is perfectly okay for the policeman to have access to it, because they understand the law and they're not going to let it control them. But corrupt people exist in high places and in the police departments, and they know they exist, but they also understand that they have value for such people because they do good things too. But these people are coming in and eavesdropping on people, and taking advantage of their fears to also incriminate people who are innocent of color, to satisfy what I think is probably rich white people who are fearful of minorities or of colored people, because over the years our entertainment industry and the culture has vilified and reduced reduced minorities to being subhuman, being animal-like. And that's a failure to identify with others, which is complete sin, evil in the Christian sense. It is not what God wants people to be. God wants people to understand even the people they can't understand or they fear, because there's nothing to fear if you are capable of addressing such topics and maybe figuring out not only the laws but the ways to value, to understand that such people still have value because they haven't committed the crime that they fear, which is molesting children. I am trying to understand molesters myself, because I am not a molester. I don't molest children. I don't seek out even women. The whole reason why I fap to porn is to avoid pursuing women. And I can't even do it in light of my situation that I have now, that I rely upon, and I get money from certain people. In a stipulation of that stuff is that I can't be married. I can't even have sexual relations with anybody, because if I did, it would fall outside of the requirements for the money that I get. And I'm a socialist too, on top of that. And people vilify socialists because they think socialists are out to steal money from people, when in reality we now have over 70K debt per person. And because of that 70K debt per person, there's going to be a heck of a lot of socialism going on in the next 40 years. And it is not the kind of socialism I'm in support of, but the socialism of paying off debt, because the government is giving out these stimulus packages, and the corporations are not going to pay one dime to the government is not going to be concerned about the taxation of the corporations, as they not have been in the last 50 years or even longer, because the government is willing to forgive their sin because they believe they provide value to America. and significance. In the same way that a policeman might be looking at child porn and smoking dope that they get access to in their job. So they're willing to forgive some demons while vilifying others without much reason to, without much justification to do so. All while making ignorant, complacent, white, rich people giving them something to relax on that is not really something to relax on. And pandering to their worldview that minorities cause crime, whenever white people also cause crime. There's a guy that says that when Trump was vilifying all the Mexicans, that Trump said that the Mexicans were bringing rapists and criminals. And this guy, there was a guy on YouTube, I forgot what, I think it was Young Turks, who pointed out that it is negligible the amount of crime that Mexico provides America to what already is in America. It's negligible. It's not even important. It is so small a fraction that it isn't even a point. Trump has lied and continue to lie, and the Republicans are willing to forgive Trump, while demonifying liberals who know that Trump is a liar. And just in the same spirit as the Henry Rollins song of the 90s, I am a liar. I will turn you into me. I will cheat you. And he exhibits all the things a liar does to try to get you to sympathize with him and then to turn you into him. And then by preying upon your fears. And I like Henry Rollins. I think he is a liberal. I'm pretty sure he isn't conservative. He's probably moderate. He might be conservative. I doubt it. Because he exhibits a lot of concern for diversity. And he's really heavy. He's a really heavy carrying activist type of guy. And is respected, I think, of some conservatives. Because they can see eye to eye with him, because he's kind of a brute, really. He has balls. That guy has balls. Maybe I have balls. I don't know if I would say I have balls, because I don't think I could ever see myself in a fight, a fist fight. I don't think I could ever get to that level. Although I've had friends tell me that I'm big enough, I should consider getting on WWF and doing full-time pro wrestling. That's not me. I'm not a sports type. I'm a lowly. I could not hurt a fly. In fact, whenever I consider capturing flies or killing flies, I don't like to kill flies, because I know their value in the universe is they are the garbage collection of the universe. They're there to try to free our environment of disease and other things. They don't really, I don't know how much they'd spread disease, but I'm pretty sure they just get rid of the stuff just as buzzards do. They're the parasites that are necessary, okay? And so what I do is I don't kill flies. I sweep them up with something like a shark vac, hand vac. I'll suck them up with that, and then I'll let them off into the outside world, which is the reason why they're always butting up against the glass, is they're trying to get out. The reason why moths are attracted to light is because they use the sun to judge, to determine where they are in the world, and those poor old creatures are attracted to lights because they think it's a sun, and their navigation system is confused. because they expect that the sun is going to stay in the same place in the sky, and their whole mechanism is dependent upon that. But light bulbs are nearby, and they provide about as much light to them that their navigation system, they're forever flying around the light because they think it's constant, and it isn't. Their relation to it changes, and so they're constantly having to recompensate their direction. It's sad. Yeah, and how to capture mosquitoes and kill them, as there are devices. They found out that mosquitoes look for carbon dioxide. That is included in their system, that there is a human, and they're attracted to carbon dioxide, and that's how they seek us out. So if we can put gas masks on and stop producing carbon dioxide, if somehow the gas masks collect our carbon dioxide, the mosquitoes won't realize we're there, and they won't be attracted to suck some blood. And when the HIV hit, there was a scare that it could be passed by mosquitoes. So you can imagine the amount of fear, because people are always fearful of what they don't know until it's kind of the opposite of what we should do with criminals, and that is to presume innocence until assume his innocence until proven guilty. In disease, the belief is vilify and assume everybody to be frauds until they can be proven to be learned and well thought. So, and I'm gonna make another video. Let me see. Oh, let me just drop this off.